is not for comfort, but for liberation by Amethyst Unarmed. Part 5 of the Truth series. Relationships include DabiHawks. Additional tags include hurt comfort, implied reference child abuse, Hawks acts like a bird, emotional baggage, villain Hawks, 5+1 fic, blood, implied reference self-harm, panic attacks, and My Hero Academia manga spoilers. Chapter 1. The Tame Bird Sings of Freedom. Summary. Twice, Toga, and Mr. Compress. 1. Jin Bubawara would do anything for the League of Villains. No, he wouldn't. Furthermore, he had, whether it was hunting down new and dangerous members for Shigaraki, or robbing the nearest drugstore for medical supplies for Dabi. Jin had become known as the guy to go to if he needed a hand with no question asked. So though he is surprised when Hawks asks him for a clone, he doesn't hesitate to say yes. No way, man, that's too difficult, he whines as he pulled out his measuring tape from his boat. Leave it to me. Hawks shoots him a perfect plastic grin, but it doesn't hide the relief in his eyes. Twice knows about the commission. Not everything, but enough to know how important Hawks having a stand-in would be. He'd seen the fear in Hawks' movements around the base, the way his head whipped around when he heard someone enter the room. He put up a convincing front, but Jin was an expert on masks. Alright, I need you to... Hawks laughs. I know the position. I've done more than enough modeling gigs. He straightens his back and extends his arms to the side. Let me know if you need me to get my wings out of your way. Jin gives him a thumbs up. I'll start with your head. You mind? Hawks blinks a few times, the way he always does when members of the League do something that surprises him. Yeah, then a moment later. Thanks for asking. It's quieter than before, but his smile seems more real. Jin will take that as a win. It is a completely average measuring session. Hawks is a perfect subject, nearly too good. He quickly moves wherever Jin needed him, sometimes before he is even told. Despite the fact Jin asked permission to touch him every time, Hawks never loses his look of surprise. It is a worrying habit, to say the least. But that was above Jin's pay grade. He was just going to tell Dabi about it. In fact, if Jin hadn't been paying extra attention, he probably wouldn't have noticed at all. He'd been watching to make sure Hawks wasn't uncomfortable. He had a feeling the idiot wouldn't tell him. So he notices the flinch when the tape measure tightens around Hawks' hips. Quit your fucking fidgeting. Are you alright? Instantly, Hawks smiles again. Jin considers the pros and cons of slapping him across the face. Maybe that would help get the message through. He'll ask Toga about it later. I'm perfect. What's up? I hurt you somehow. It was all your fault. Hawks' smile turned frigid. It's nothing, really. Okay, liar. Hawks, to make a clone of you, I need all the information I get. Hawks frowns and groans. Alright, just... It's kinda weird, okay? Hawks starts to undo his belt. Twice, as usual, is of two minds about this development. He covers his eyes and shouted, I'm saving myself for Toga! Then immediately whistles in approval. I've been waiting for this. That at least sparks a laugh out of Hawks. A real one. Oh, buddy, I'm touched, but you got the wrong idea. Just a second. He hesitantly reaches behind himself and brushes a hand around the small of his back, in between pants and skin. He winces in pain again, but before Twice could ask, he saw why. Scraggly bunches of feathers drape over the waist of his pants, the same scarlet as his wings. These, however, have very clearly not been given the same careful treatment. The feathers themselves are bent at awkward angles from where they have been crushed by Hawks' clothing, the veins clumped and ragged. They are patchy as well, like a child had grabbed them and pulled too hard. Some are even broken, jagged halves the only remaining evidence of a vicious attempt at removal. I know, Hawks says, scratching the back of his head. It's kind of freaky. Are they sensitive to the touch? Huh? Your tail feathers, man. I gotta measure them. Can I touch them? Are you stupid? Hawks inhales quickly. You don't have any questions? I just asked one bird brain. Hawks laughs again, loud, brash, and anxious. I guess you did. Yeah, just be careful. They're a little damaged. Jin hums and carefully straightens one of the longer feathers. He manages to get the rest of the measurements with ease. He never figures out why Hawk stared at him like that for the rest of the session, though, as if he's waiting to be scolded. Jin decides not to mention it. 2. Himiko Toga really likes having Hawks at the base. She likes having someone willing to let her style their hair or stay up late gossiping in mud masks, like she used to with Big Sis Magne. He even listens with unwavering attention when she talks about Mr. Staney, though the topic always seems to make him queasy. And most importantly, he agrees to go when she begged him for donuts. She doesn't have to annoy him into it, like she did with Dobby. Hurry up! Himiko squeals. We're almost there! She's in disguise today. A few days ago, she ran into the cutest girl, who had green hair like Sue. Now they can match. Himiko runs ahead to stand at the crosswalk. She's bouncing on her feet, and she pumps her arms up and down. If she closes her eyes, she can almost imagine a knife in her hands. It helps distract from the rising, rushing want inside her. Tomura would be upset if she slipped up and stabbed someone in public. She's getting bored of waiting. I'm coming, Hawks placates, but he had sped up enough to be walking beside her. He had shed his wings before they went out and hid his features with a ball cap and sunglasses. Haven't seen you this excited about something other than murder. Are the donuts really that good? Just wait and see. They reach the store. It's an unassuming building, other than the threatening graffiti on the sidewalk in front of it. Himiko's eyes narrow at the acidic words, but Hawks doesn't seem to notice. He opens the door for her, bowing like a prince as she passes. Himiko lets out a giggle and tries not to blush at the treatment. It had been a while since a boy was so nice to her. She'd almost forgotten what it felt like. The inside of the bakery smells absolutely delicious. It is a perfect combination of risen dough, sugar, and, of course, the special ingredients. She can tell Hawks can smell it too. His back stiffens, and she watches him instinctively ready his talons. His eyes quickly dart around the room in search of injured prey. Himiko loved this side of the former pro. An elderly woman putters out from the background, most likely alerted by the bell on the door. She's adorned with a pink apron littered with red stains, gold-rimmed glasses, and most noticeably, a fox snout. Her fur is striped with lines of silver. Hello, I'll be right with you. She stops and sniffs slowly, taking in the scent of the air. Her face lights up and she looks at the two of them with a winning, wrinkled grin. Himiko, it's been too long. Hawk sputters in surprise, but Himiko ignores him, already running to her. Basan! They hug over the counter. The hard edge digs into Himiko's stomach, but the feeling of Basan's whiskers tickling her neck is worth every bit of discomfort. Surprising you is no fun anymore, Himiko whines. You always know it's me. She chuckles like crinkling newspaper. You have a mighty strong quirk, but it's no match for my sniffer. Basan looks past Himiko and seems to notice Hawks for the first time. Ah, I see you brought a friend. She beckons Hawks forward, hands extended towards his own. My, I haven't seen such a strong raptor gene in ages. I've been smelling you since you entered my territory about 10 minutes ago. Would you like a mice pie? One of my daughter's friends has an owl quirk, and she just loves them. Basan, we want pig's blood donuts. Basan smiles at Himiko with a fondness so foreign it almost hurts. Of course you do, dearie. How many? Wait. Hawks interrupts. The feathered hairs at the back of his head are beginning to ruffle with agitation. What's going on? He turns an incredulous stare at Himiko. You want what? Pig's blood donuts, Himiko says again, and Hawks looks at her like she has come from another planet. This is an alternate lifestyle bakery, Basan explains. We cater particularly to those with more carnivorous instincts, be that blood-related quirks, like Himiko's here, or animal ones like your own. Hawks is staring at her with a gaping mouth. Himiko can't see his eyes behind those mirrored sunglasses, but she's sure they were wide and unblinking. And that's just allowed? He stutters, and Basan's face darkens. Himiko giggles. That was a mistake. You've been denying your instincts, haven't you? She scolds and angrily jabs at Hawks with a pen. She tuts and walks over to the display case. No wonder you're so pale. You probably aren't getting enough iron. Raw and red meat is important to our diets. She picks out the biggest donut she has from among Himiko's favorites and offers it to Hawks. On the house, dearie. Hawks sputters even as he licks his lips in anticipation. Oh no, I couldn't. That wasn't a suggestion. Hawk sighs and begrudgingly accepts the donut. It looks just like a normal jelly filled, iced with the pink face of a pig. But Himiko knows just how delicious they are. Hawks takes a bite of the donut, and the tension slumps off his shoulders. His eyelids flutter closed as he savors the taste. His second bite is sloppy. He tears into the donut with a ferocity Toko recognizes. She saw in her reflection. A drop of the red filling trickled down the corner of his mouth. Toga can't hold back her squeal. He looks so cute like that. It seems to snap Hawks out of whatever donut-induced trance he was trapped in. Before she can even say anything, Hawks scrubs at his mouth with his sleeve. The action is violent with shame. Toga pouts. Hawks looks so much nicer covered in blood. We'll take one. He pauses, glancing between Himiko and the donut still in his hands. Actually, make it 2 dozen. Himiko cheers. 3. Atsuhiro Sako is having a good day. It was nice to have a good day every once in a while, especially since he was used to calamity after calamity. But today's a good day. Though Shigaraki has sent him on an infiltration mission with a bunch of Meta Liberation Army fanatics, the plan had gone exactly as organized. It had taken 3 days to stake out and doling out mind-blowingly easy orders, but they'd gotten in. Compress carefully touches the pocket where the orb is hidden away, just to make sure it's still there. The League of Villains is now in possession of an armored truck. Now he can get some food, and promptly pass out on his bed for 17 hours. Unfortunately for him, the kitchen is already occupied. Hey, Mr. Compress. Hawks greets with his usual TV smile. Glad to have you back. How was the mission? He's making cup noodles, and Sako can feel his blood pressure rising just looking at them. He resists the urge to scold them, but makes a note to make sure Hawks gets a real meal later. All the actors played their roles perfectly, Sako answers, and our encore is secured. With a deft movement, Sako slides the marble from the pocket in his sleeve into his palm. He launches it forward and catches it as though it appeared out of thin air. Hawks gasps in astonishment, much to Sako's glee. Though the details are few and far between, Sako knows the former hero had a less than liberated childhood. It wouldn't be a surprise if he'd never seen a magician before, and Sako would never turn down a chance to perform. The tricks he performs are simple. The marble dances across his knuckles. He palms it, slips it into his sleeve, and pulls out another one with his offhand, like it teleported through the air. Hawks watches with rapt, dilated attention, and Sako's ego swells with pride. He has plenty of stolen loot, so what's the harm? 1, 2, 3 marbles appear in his left hand, each with an ease it's taken him decades to perfect. He begins juggling them, a simple act from bygone ages, each marble touching his hand for no more than an instant. He has fallen into a regular one-handed rhythm when Hawks reaches out, snatches one, and pops it into his mouth. Sako can't help it. He laughs. Oh, my dear boy, I can't tell you how badly I needed that. He hadn't realized that would happen. Spinner always laughed when Sako was practicing his palming. He always said it was too distracting. Something about the shine driving his instincts nuts. And though it made perfect sense, Sako had never considered Hawks would have the same problem. Hawks turns nearly as red as his wings. He spits the marble back in his hand and shoves it at Sako, and scrambles out of the room so quickly he nearly runs into the doorframe. It only makes Sako laugh harder. Chapter 2. Wild Birds Fly. Summary. Shigaraki, Dabi, Spinner. 4. Tomohiro Shigaraki believes Hawks wants to kill him. He doesn't have so-called concrete evidence of this theory, but he is almost certain that it's true. Hawks has been crashing at the Paranormal Liberation Front headquarters for more than a month now. Despite Tomohira's reservations, Hawks has quickly become one of his top officers. He's driven, ruthless, and efficient. It's a brand of competence Tomohira isn't used to, so more often than not, he runs out of duties to assign. Hawks ends up stuck haunting the base alone until Dabi or one of the others return, so he'll sometimes decide to follow Tomohira around. There's nothing inherently wrong with this. However, more often than not, he would catch Hawks staring at him, a blank expression on his face. His eyes seemed to lock on Tomohira's head, as though he could tunnel through. If it happened once or twice, Tomohira would have dismissed it. Unfortunately, scarcely a day went by that Tomura was free from the niggling sensation on the back of his neck, letting him know he was being watched. This was, of course, weird as hell. But if Tomura killed Hawks, he was fairly certain Toga and Dabi would actually defect, and then he'd be down 3 lieutenants. So for now, he ignored it. He'd deal with it when Hawks actually tried to kill him. Honestly, at this point, he's so fucking busy, he might just welcome death. Well, any night but tonight, that is. Tonight is Tomura's first free night since the fall of All Might and the arrest of his master. Tonight, he's going to sit in the common room and play a video game some past version of himself was excited for. He's going to stay up until 3 a.m. and let Dabi deal with putting out the fires for once. Except, what Tomura doesn't take into account is that he has spent the last week working well into the night to make this free day possible. Furthermore, though the game is undeniably entertaining, it is a platformer with gently repetitive music. It is not even 11 o'clock by the time the game has lulled himself to sleep. When Tomura wakes up, the room is still dark. The only light in the room is the flickering blue-gray from the TV. Also, the room is sideways. Shigaraki must have fallen to the side during the night. All of this makes sense. Nonetheless, none of this explains the fingers running gently through his hair. Sharp nails scratch along the scalp, carefully pulling apart any knots they come across. The sensation is as pleasant as it is foreign. He tries to sit up. What's going on? He slurs, less accusatory than he would have liked. The person messing with his hair chuckles, and it gently shakes Tomura. He realizes for this first time that his head is in someone's lap. It's just preening, boss. Hawks. He fucking knew he was up to something. Go back to sleep. Hawks continues, as though he is not dealing with the most dangerous criminal in all of Japan. Tomura goes to screech at him, to disintegrate him, make him pay for making a mockery of him. But Hawks runs his talons along Tomura's scalp again, and he cannot remember the last time he felt this at ease. So if Tomura closes his eyes and lets himself be lulled back to sleep, no one has any proof. He'll kill Hawks tomorrow. 5. Dabi hates how much he loves flying with Hawks. It isn't something they could do often or even infrequently, which is honestly for the best. Dabi spent most of the day after a flight huddled up in the bathroom. He would lie on the cold tile and wait for his stomach to realize they were no longer moving. But for all his motion sickness, he couldn't deny the absolute ecstasy of flight. He reveled in the wind tugging at his hair, the thump of powerful wings holding them up, the security of Hawks' grip around him. It was always freezing at the heights Hawks took him to, but Dabi was born for the cold in a way that made it damn near comfortable. So when Hawks offers to fly him home after a confrontation with a disgruntled group of former Yakuza, he immediately agrees. Spinner's shitty driving made him sick anyway, and this way he'd get home faster without having to play a car game with twice. Not to mention Hawks was 3 times quicker. It was a win in every possible way. The flight starts out normal enough, despite their height difference. Hawks easily carries him, a feat that speaks volumes about his strength and Dabi's own malnourishment. Being so high above the rest of humanity makes him dizzy with power. This is a freedom none of the people below him will ever get to experience. And better yet, they can never take it away. Every dip and adjustment makes him cackle with delight. Judging by the look on Hawks' face, he enjoys it just as much. He has a perfect view of Hawks when they fly like this. Gone are the days Hawks is weighed down by bulky goggles and muffling headphones. Instead, Hawks openly uses his third eyelid when he needs additional protection and is free to use his hearing for tracking. Dabi is enraptured by the way his head jerks as he scours the ground for the source of noises only he can hear. The feral smile Hawks get when he finds it is temptation incarnate, and their flight is the only thing that bars Dabi from kissing him. They're halfway home when Hawks suddenly stills. Hawks got a blank look in his eye. Birdie, Dabi asked, concern clawing at his chest. Are you... Hawks plunged towards the earth. Dabi is screaming. At least he's pretty sure he's screaming. The wind drowns him out, drowns any plea of his for Hawks to fucking pull up. The ground is getting closer and closer. Dabi's stomach lurched. They're going to die. They're 50 feet from the ground. 40, 30, 20. Hawks' wings flare out from the side and catch an updraft. If Dabi had been paying attention, he would have seen Hawks shake his head, come back to himself. But he isn't. Instead, he's leaning as far away from Hawks as he can, trying not to vomit on either of them. They reach solid ground, and Dabi squirms out of Hawks' grip. He lands awkwardly on his feet, barely staying upright. His scars ache from his frantic movements as he stumbles to the wall of the alleyway they're in. His head is spinning and he feels like he's been turned inside out. He groans despite himself and tries to focus only on the feeling of the cool brick beneath his hands. A moment or a lifetime later, he feels a hand on his shoulder. Dobby? Hawks asks. His voice is shaky in a way he normally represses. Dobby glares over his shoulder. Hawks looks pathetic. All his flight confidence has evaporated, leaving not even the faceless soldier. Dobby is looking at whatever mess was beneath that. It almost makes it difficult to get angry. Luckily, Dobby has had plenty of practice. What the fuck was that? He spits, doing his best to look like he wasn't about to pass out mere moments ago. The air begins to smell of charcoal. Hawks pauses and stares at Dobby helplessly. I don't know. You don't know? Dobby nearly shouts. I don't know. What don't you know? I don't know why I did it, okay? Now Hawks is shouting too. Dobby becomes all too aware of the stares they are collecting from the nearby street. I had to do it, okay? You have to do it, Julia. You need to be stronger. Dobby tisks. Whatever, bird brain. He brushes by Hawks, intentionally checking him on the shoulder. I'm taking a cab. See you at the base. He doesn't look back. He never looks out the window of his taxi either. Despite this, he knows that if he had looked closely, he would have seen the winged figure circling over him, keeping watch. Later that night, Dobby lies awake in his bed. Sleeping feels impossible. Every time he closes his eyes, he sees the ever-rising ground, hears his own screams. Even if he does manage to drift off, he is certain he'll be plagued with night terrors. So Dobby pulls out his phone and opens a web browser. He's not sure what he's looking for, really. He has even less of an idea of what he'll find, but he looks all the same. Hog dive behavior, why? He types into the search bar. Dozens of entries come up, about all kinds of raptors in all kinds of situations. What species is Hawks anyway? Dobby would ask, but he doubts Hawks knows. He clicks the first link that seems even tangentially related. Red-tailed, red wings, same difference. And begins skimming. He passes all the bullshit about taxonomy and migration, and is just about positive this is a waste of time when a paragraph under courting catches his eye. Male hawks typically take part in a sky dance. A sky dance typically consists of the male hawk flying to a great height and then dive towards the ground with great speed before shooting back up. Dobby should have stopped reading 10 words ago. This is already fucking awful, and he's never going to be able to look Hawks in the eye ever again. Still, he glances a word a few paragraphs down, and can't help but read it. Red-tailed hawks, mate for life. Dobby deletes his browser history and chucks his phone against the wall for good measure. +1. Spinner knew he wasn't anything special. Hell, he spent his whole life being told that. His quirk was a fun party trick at most, and the most interesting thing about him, his mutation, caused him more grief than anything. He wasn't powerful, smart, or skilled like the rest of the league, and that was fine. Spinner had come to terms with his normalcy, and furthermore, reveled in it. After all, without normal people like him, no real change could happen. He was part of something, and that was what mattered. But it did make it more difficult for him to realize what the fuck was going on with Hawks. He didn't put the pieces together when Hawks came up and asked what grocery store he usually went to. After all, it was Hawks' turn to go out and get supplies. When his favorite kind of crickets showed up in the kitchen, with Choga's blood and Hawks' raw meat, he figured Dobby was trying to suck up and get Spinner to do his reports. Again. After Spinner mentioned his favorite climbing spot in the base, he didn't mind when Hawks started joining him. The two would sit together in the sun for hours, Hawks napping and Spinner on his switch. He didn't think much of it when he reached out to straighten some of Hawks' feathers, and his sunning time began to double as grooming for Hawks. He didn't notice the odd grin Hawks gave him when he instinctively echoed his chirps and clicks with his own. He hadn't even realized he'd been doing it, honestly. Most geckos had a large range of vocalization, and his family had been no different. He was so used to doing it at home, he replied without second thought. So when he and Hawks began greeting each other with clicks and whistles, he figured it was no different from how he and Twice developed a handshake together. Intimate, but unremarkable. So when Hawks knocked at his door, the last thing he expected were the words that came out of his mouth. I need your help. Spinner blinked at him. Once, twice. He rubbed his eyes. Hawks was still there. Spinner, honest to God, looked behind him. He half expected to see Dobby or Shigaraki hidden away in his room, but it was still empty. Me? He asked, still expecting Hawks to come to his senses. Hawks nods. You're the only person who can help me. He glances around the hallway as though making sure no one is about to jump out at him. Can I come in? Wordlessly, Spinner moves out of the doorway. Hawks cheerily makes himself at home on Spinner's bed. So, you know how the commission wasn't super on board with the whole bird instincts thing? Hawks picks at his talons, trying to look nonchalant. The sound is already starting to drive Spinner nuts. He sighs. Only what you've told me. Hawks hums, only peeking up once to judge Spinner's reaction. I told you about what they did to my talons, right? Spinner's hands curl into fists. His own claws dig painfully into his palm. Yes, he growls. Hawks barely seems to notice. And you know how I've been growing them out? Hawks, what is this about? Hawks bites his lip. I don't know how to fix it. You're so smart about all of this stuff. Meanwhile, I can barely take care of my human needs. I tried on my own, but it's getting worse and it hurts. Just spit it out. My hands aren't the only place I grow talons. Hawks sputters. What? What do you mean? Hawks huffs and runs his talons through his hair. The commission used to do the same treatment on my feet too, and since my hands were fine, I thought... But I was wrong. Hawks shoots him a sheepish smile. It isn't pretty. Spinner is nervous now. Show me. If you say so. Hawks sings songs, but his hands shake as he undoes his shoelaces. The first thought Spinner has is, Hawks has some fucking ugly feet. They're humanoid, technically, but only in the way monkeys are humanoid. The way mannequins are humanoid. His toes are long, the length of fingers, and tipped with long talons. They are skilled like a bird's as well, though merely to the point of looking dry. They are clearly meant for a wilder life than this. The second thought Spinner has is, those are absolutely infected. Lesions cover Hawks' feet. In places, his shoe has rubbed his foot raw. They're furiously red and puffy, and Spinner considers it a miracle Hawks has even been standing. Hawks misinterprets the horror on his face and slides his shoe back on. I know, it's nasty. He chuckles. You ever seen anything like it? Never. Spinner answers before he can think, and Hawks visibly deflates. Sorry I bothered you. He stands and heads toward the door. Don't worry, I'll get it figured out. Thank you for... Wait. Hawks looks back at him. His eyes are wide and watery, mouth partially open in a half-formed deflection. His hair was fluffier, thick with plumes he'd let grow out, and he ditched the goggles months ago. As a result, his face seemed rounder, softer. He no longer looked like the perfect image of a government hero, and for the first time, Spinner realized just how close in age they were. Hawks may have been a year or two older, but right now, he looked like another lost kid. And that, Spinner could relate to. He places his hands on Hawks' shoulders. I'll admit, this is out of my wheelhouse. He's grateful his voice sounds more confident than he feels. But there has to be someone out there who knows what's going on. We'll do some research, and we'll take care of it. You'll be back to perfect in no time. Hawks nods and laughs, and Spinner is relieved to see his typical bravado blustering up inside him. After all, we can't have one of the league's best lieutenants down for the count. Hawks chirps. Despite a flirty wink, he seems to really mean it. Spinner clicks his tongue in protest. It's not about that. You're my friend, Hawks. Of course I'll help you. For a brief second, Hawks stares at him, dumbstruck. Then a wide grin breaks out onto his face. So bright, Spinner feels an urge to shade his eyes. 2 loud wing beats, and Spinner is in a comfortably crushing embrace. Before he can react, there are 2 more wing beats, and Hawks is out of the room. Spinner swallows a fond smile, even though there is no one around to see it. You have just finished listening to Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 of It's Not for Comfort, but for Liberation by Amethyst Unarmed. Chapter 3 is set after the next part of the Truth series, so I'll get back to that after that. If you enjoyed the story, please leave them some feedback on archiveofourown.org/work/278318 And if you enjoyed my reading of the story, you can find me on Twitter at twitter.com/Kaiinbed.